The reasons behind the intervention in Libya are constantly being questioned.
Western powers have frozen the assets of Muammar Gaddafi and other senior figures in the Libyan government. They say the aim is to help bring down the government refusing the will of its people. But as RT's Lauren Lister reports, history suggests Libya may never see its money again after the international wealth grab.
Most countries consider the freezing of their assets as an act of economic warfare.
The weapons here, the foreign assets of either Libya, the country, or Gaddafi and his family, that some estimate to be almost $100 billion. It's believed to be spread across the globe, oil money invested through the country's sovereign wealth fund. Everything from a stake in the company that owns the Financial Times newspaper to land near the Spanish resort town of Marbella, being developed into homes and a golf course, to the oil company Euronews, and billions of dollars of cash in banks throughout Europe and the U.S. The question now is what happens to all this money, especially the $30 billion the United States has frozen, the most ever in the history of this country in this type of situation. It essentially cuts Libya off from the entire U.S. banking system. As for Libya's financial interests, analysts say you could look to the history of countries such as Iran. Their assets were frozen in the wake of the 1979 hostage crisis.
Their money that was seized from Iran back in 1979 has still, not been returned to the Iranians. So it's basically time for a plunder play. If we can take it away from them, we will.
I think that what is at stake here is something far more fundamental, which nobody is really mentioning, at least in the media. This is part of the battle for oil. Libya has 3.5% of global oil reserves, twice those of the United States. It's one of the major oil producers. It supplies large amounts of oil to the European Union. Its National Oil Corporation is among the 25 largest oil companies in the world. And what is involved here is the battle for oil. It's essentially what Washington is aiming at is to establish a sphere of influence in North Africa, establish control over these oil reserves, which constitute billions and billions of dollars of proceeds for the oil companies.
They are definitely testing new weapons at this very moment. This is just another American illegal, discredited adventure in attacking people and calling it humanitarian and justifying on the basis that supposedly it's humanitarian, it's for the best of the world, but really it's about seizing control of Libya and making sure that any popular uprising in Libya is eliminated, and at the same time advancing our interests. Oil, defense, uranium, gold in Libya. These are big mineral concessions available.
And what are the real motives for France, the UK and US leading the attack on Libya? Some say it's pure vengeance.
They're certainly settling accounts and taking revenge.
Turkey says it's disturbed by France's eagerness to invade, but experts believe Ankara shouldn't be surprised. Gaddafi is accused of ordering the bombing of UTA Flight 772, which killed 54 French men and women in 1989. A UK court found that Gaddafi's agents the year before planned the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, which killed 43 British and 189 US citizens.
He blew up, his intelligence agency did a terrorist bomb, very similar to the Lockerbie bomb in the UK. It was called UTA Flight 722, and it blew up over Niger with the loss of everyone on board. So I would argue that there's an element of revenge, a very strong element of revenge now.
More recently, Gaddafi's hurt French commercial interests.
He fined French oil firm Total $500 million. He also bought Russian fighter planes instead of French Rafale jets.
There's a lot of spoils to be won, and all those tanks and all those military equipment will need to be sold to whoever wins in the future. We can talk about that later. And of course, there's all-important oil supplies. There's 1.5 million barrels of oil a day.
Let's talk about the future now. The end game to all of this, if Gaddafi is removed, what next? How likely is it that we will actually see a smooth transition to a democratic state?
I think there's no doubt the Western powers want a strong man in power so that the oil resources and oil contracts and military contracts and so forth can be arranged the way the Western powers and the big multinationals want them to be.
And Gaddafi was pressuring U.S. oil companies to reimburse Libya for the costs, for the payments to the families of Pan Am 103. You see, there is this very important detail that Libya had nothing to do with Lockerbie. And the United Nations had imposed sanctions on Libya and forced Libya to pay damages to the families, $2.7 billion. And they had wrecked Libya's economy with sanctions. And now, last summer, we began to hear that Gaddafi was pushing the oil companies for reimbursements of the costs to the Libyans. You don't bomb a village in order to save it. I think it's a tragedy. This war is wrong. It is a war for oil and to take Libya's resources. They've already created a new national bank. That's outrageous. Clearly, this has been on the drawing board for a long time, and these people have no trouble, no mercy for the Libyan people. Anyone who cared about the Libyan people would stop immediately.
Now we have a rather conspicuous and despicable act of targeting the family of the head of state, namely his son, as well as his grandchildren. And we can make our own judgments, but this kind of behavior is in derogation of international law. Nothing allows the United States to go into a country and start killing the head of state or members of his family.
Well, indeed, Russia's condemned that, but what else can be done to try and calm this situation down, to make sure that the Allies stay by that resolution 1973?
Well, that resolution 1973 has been violated from the outset. The NATO is arming the Libya Islamic Fighting Group, which is a terrorist organization linked to Al-Qaeda. It's on the ground. It's supported by special forces. They started a ground war. This is an invasion. This is a full-fledged war.
According to some, it's about protecting civilians.
We must not tolerate this regime using military force against its own people.
Others say it's about oil.
The only reason they're interested with Libya is about the oil. You'd think we'd be in Iraq if the major export there was broccoli.
But some are convinced intervention in Libya is all about currency, specifically Gaddafi's plan to introduce the gold dinar, a single African currency made from gold, a true sharing of the wealth. In the months leading up to the military intervention, he called on African and Muslim nations to join together to create this new currency that would rival the dollar and euro. They would sell oil and other resources around the world only for gold dinars. It's an idea that would shift the economic balance of the world. Countries' wealth would depend on how much gold they have, not how many dollars they trade. And Libya has 144 tons of gold. The UK has double that, but 10 times the population.
If Gaddafi had an intent to try to reprice his oil or whatever else the country was selling in the global markets and accept something else as a currency, or maybe launch a gold dinar currency, any move such as that would certainly not be welcomed by the power elite today who are responsible for controlling the world's central banks. So yes, that would certainly be something that would cause his immediate dismissal and the need for other reasons to be brought forth for removing him from power.
It's happened before. In 2000, Saddam Hussein announced Iraqi oil would be traded in euros, not dollars. Sanctions and an invasion followed. Some say because the Americans were desperate to prevent OPEC from transferring oil trading in all its member countries to the euro.
The UK's gold is kept here in a secure vault somewhere in the depths of the Bank of England. As in most developed countries, there's not enough to go around. But that's not the case in places like Libya and many of the Gulf states. A gold dinar would have given oil-rich African and Middle Eastern countries the power to turn around to their energy-hungry customers and say, sorry, the price has gone up and we want gold. Some say the US and its NATO allies literally couldn't afford to let that happen. Laura Emmett, RT, London.
In fact, the first step of this war was to take Libya's money by freezing its billions of dollars of assets in North America and Europe. That was the first step in this war. That's how the war started, financially, when they stole Libya's money.
But there'd be nothing left if you bomb the country in the way that you say they are doing. Once a rich country, no longer if you bomb it to bits. So surely it'd be a broken country if that's the case, once they try to inherit it.
It'll be broken for the people of Libya, who they don't care about. What they do care about is the financial assets and resources of Libya, which they'll appropriate. They've already set up an oil corporation in eastern Libya based in Benghazi, a national bank based in Benghazi. They control these, just like how they controlled the national bank in Bosnia.